Hello, this is Keith Hall, and this is the part 2 in our series in how to use PHP MySQLi class to create and manage a MySQL database. And today's tutorial is actually, we're going to be talking about how to create a table within an existing database. So again, as previously, I'm using the XApp control panel to allow my PC to act as a server, and I'm using the text editor Notepad++. So again, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be making a connection to a MySQL server database, a database that already exists, and the database name is library in this case, and we're going to be using the MySQLi class in order to make that connection. We're going to be checking for the successful connection. We're going to be executing a SQL statement that will create our table within our database. And of course, we're going to be checking for the successful execution of that SQL statement. And at the end, we're going to close our connection to our SQL server and database. So what we're going to be going to next is going to our admin panel in MySQL in PHP MySQL admin, and we're going to just verify that this table that we're going to create doesn't already exist. And then we're going to go ahead and run our script, our PHP file that creates our table. We'll go back to the admin panel and we'll verify that the table was created, and then we'll get into the actual PHP file to discuss how we create the table. So let's go to our next step. Okay, so we're now in the admin portion of our MySQL database, and this is where we can manage our actual database for MySQL. Over here on the left are a list of databases that are currently set up, and in our last tutorial we created a database called library. Now if you could see over here to the left of each name, there's our pluses and minuses. Pluses meaning that a table or tables already exist for this database, and if there's a minus sign there, that means no tables exist yet. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run the script, our PHP file, to create a table within this database called library. So let's run that script right now. So I'm in my browser. I'm going to navigate to my PHP file, and it's called create table in this example. So I'm going to click on it. It's going to run, and it says the table book created successfully. That's my message that I put out in my PHP file after all the connections I made, after verifying the connection was successful and the SQL statement was successful. This is what gets displayed out to the browser. So let's now go to the admin panel, and let's go ahead and refresh this the screen here, and notice what happens to the library database. This should turn into a plus sign over here. So let's refresh it, and as you can see, underneath library, a new table called book was created. So a new table was created. So of course there's no data in there yet, but the table now exists. So let's now go over to our PHP file that did this step. So first of all, we're going to define our variables, and in order to make a connection to our database, we need to pass in certain variables to this construct for MySQLi. And we're going to be passing in the server name, the username, the password, and the database name. In this case, the database was library, because what we want to do is create a table within this database called library. So that's what this statement does here. We make the connection. Now we're going to check whether or not that connection was successful or not. If the connect error exists, in other words, if this connection returns an error, this statement checks for that. And if there is an error, we're going to perform this die function here, and we're just going to be passing in a string to that die function, and we're going to say it's connection failed, and we're going to concatenate to this message the last connect error message that was made from the last call. So in our case, since the connection was successful, we're not going to be executing this code here. This next statement here, we're going to be creating a string and passing that string into our variable called SQL. And what we're going to be passing into it is the syntax, or the actual SQL statement to create our table called book in this case. So what we're doing here is we're going to create 4 different fields. One called book ID, next one called book name, next name author, and the last field name will be book price, book underscore price. So we're going to define book ID, book underscore ID, as an integer, and when we pass in a number, all this means is it's going to be a display width of 6 numbers basically. So in other words, when we go ahead and retrieve data and we want to display it, no matter how large that number is, we're only going to display 6 digits. The unsigned for this means that we're only going to allow non-negative numbers, and the auto increment option means that every time a new row is added to this table, we're going to increment this field here called book ID. So it's going to go up by 1 every time a new row is added, and we're also going to set this field name book underscore ID to the primary key. And a primary key is just that uniquely identifies this row in the table. So as for these other fields, we're going to set them as varchar or as an integer. Varchar, all that means is we're going to have a maximum character width of 255 characters, but we're passing in 50 because we only want the maximum character width to be actual 50 in this case. So after we do this, now we're gonna do a query. Basically, we're gonna execute this query statement here, and we do that by using a query PHP PDO object query function, and we're gonna pass in this SQL statement, and we're going to check whether or not it's true, meaning did it execute successfully. If it did, we're going to display, by using the echo statement, we're going to display out to the browser this message. And we're going to surround this message by HTML tags called H1. And H1 is just basically a heading tag that displays text as a larger font than normal. If the connection, or if this execution of this SQL statement was not successful, then we're going to spit out to the browser an error message. And then at the end, we're just going to close out the connection to MySQL server in our database. So I hope this helps you understand how you can actually create a table for your MySQL server database within a PHP file. Our next we'll have our next tutorial. We're going to show how you could start managing your data or putting data into your tables. So let's go on to the next tutorial, and I want to thank you for stopping by. And again, as you watch this tutorial, I'm sure you know of other people or other parties that want to learn how to do this. So pass this along to them. So please like and share it. Thanks again for your time, and I'll see you on the next tutorial. Bye now.